Hello, everyone. My name is Mike Silagadze. I'm the founder and CEO of Etherfi. I'm excited to be chatting with you guys today. So actually, this speaking slot was originally called, I think, Rebuilding the Crypto Economy. I was swatted in recently, so my talk is totally not that. So if that's what you were looking to hear, I apologize. But what I'll do is I'll talk to you about Etherfi a little bit, and then the rest of my talk is called Cargo Cult Crypto, which should be pretty interesting. Okay, so first let's talk a little bit about Etherfi. I'll just spend a minute or two on that. So Etherfi is a new protocol we're launching actually at ETH Denver this coming week, so we're very excited for that. And it is a fundamentally new type of liquid staking protocol. I probably don't need to do this with this audience, but maybe show of hands, how many people know what liquid staking is? Pretty much everybody? Okay, great. All right, so then I'll just talk about what makes Etherfi unique and why we're interesting. There's two things that are interesting about Etherfi and what makes it different from other liquid staking protocols. The first is that Etherfi is the only one where the staker actually controls their keys. With every other liquid staking protocol, you deposit your ETH, and then the node operator generates the keys, which introduces a bunch of counterparty risk that I'll talk about later. And with Etherfi, the staker actually generates the keys and then delegates the node operation, which I think is a really important step in terms of decentralization. The second thing that's interesting about Etherfi is that we mint an NFT representation of every validator that's spun up as part of our protocol. And that's really cool because it allows us to store metadata related to the validator. So things like what client it's running, what geography it's based in, what the node operator is, and what services it might be running. And that's really interesting because it allows us to build basically a composable layer on top of which you can build stuff on our staking protocol. That's really interesting and exciting. And if you want to learn more, happy to answer more questions in Q&A or chat with us afterwards. The other thing, and you heard it here first, we actually just raised the seed round. We're launching the alpha, or I guess the phase one of our protocol on Tuesday. The announcement hasn't actually gone out yet, so you guys heard it here first. Very exciting. We have some great investors that participate in the round, really great VCs, and lots of crypto OGs like Arthur Hayes and other cool people. So that's awesome. So look out for the announcement on Tuesday. Okay, so now I'll talk about Cargo Cult Crypto. Again, show of hands, how many people have read the Richard Feynman talk called Cargo Cult Science? All right, most of you haven't. Okay, so I'll explain that a little bit and then get into the crypto side of it. It's a really amazing talk, probably one of my favorites. It's a really touching tribute to scientific integrity. So if you haven't read it, definitely recommend it. The context for that talk is this idea of cargo cults. What cargo cults are, they emerge out of the World War II U.S. military bases in the various sort of Pacific islands. The U.S. During World War II would have these bases, and on these islands they would have an airstrip. On this airstrip, planes would land and would bring all kinds of good cargo, which the troops would, of course, trade with the local populations. And the local native indigenous populations most of them hadn't been exposed to technology before. So this was like new and interesting to them. They got all this good stuff that they previously didn't have access to. And then when the war ended, really weird and interesting things started to emerge, which is religions or cults started to develop around bringing the cargo back, bringing the planes back, because the U.S. had left after the war. And so these religions developed where they would build these sort of mock airstrips with fires lit along the side, these tribes, that represented like runway lights. They would build like straw satellite dishes. They would have like headgear made out of wood that sort of looked like what they saw the Americans doing when they were there. And they were following these rituals, trying to bring the planes back. Like they would like march back and forth and like do this stuff that they saw the Americans doing. Now, if you put yourself in the position of someone trying to explain to these folks, who I'm sure were well-meaning, saying, okay, here's what you're missing. here's what you need to do to bring like some economic growth so that the planes and cargo would actually come back. It's not something simple, right? It's not just like, oh, you need to make the shape of your satellite dish a little better. Like it's kind of like if you squint from a distance, the form looks right. They're kind of doing everything right, but something fundamental and is missing. And this becomes kind of an analogy, and Feynman uses this analogy in his talk to the social sciences, where like, okay, they're following all the form of science. They're publishing papers. There's peer review. There's all kinds of math in the papers, but like the experiments don't replicate. We're not any better at any of the subjects that they study, and so on and so forth. So there's something missing, even though the form looks perfect. And once you have this sort of mental model, you kind of start seeing cargo cults everywhere. At least I do. Maybe that's a weird thing with me. And so I want to talk about crypto cargo cults. And I'll talk about 3 particular examples that will probably piss some people off, which I think is good. Will hopefully create some good debate. But I think they're examples of cargo cults where the superficial elements of crypto are being followed, but the core element is kind of missing. And I think everybody kind of has a story of how they got into crypto. Like, I read about it on Hacker News in like 2010 and started messing around with it super early. And the thing that got me excited about crypto was this idea of a stateless money. And I'm preaching to the choir here, right? In that it promised this ability to put further check on government so that they couldn't inflate away your wealth and prosecute wars that nobody wanted and all kinds of good stuff. And this full separation of government and economics. Like that's what excited me about crypto. And so I'll talk about 3 examples of things that, as I said, are kind of cargo cults. So I can probably just put the slide up and not really say much, but I'll talk here. I'll start with what I like about Binance Smart Chain. How's that? I think it was designed, maybe I'm being too optimistic, by well-meaning people that were trying to solve real problems with Ethereum. I mean, most of you, I'm sure, know that for long periods of time, transactions on Ethereum were like, I don't know, hundreds of dollars in some cases, and they would take minutes or sometimes hours to go through. The UX was like really terrible in a lot of cases. And Binance said, well, look, we'll launch our own smart chain. We'll make it super fast. We'll increase the block size. We'll just have 21 validators. They're totally super independent. And that'll make it, that'll solve all these problems. And arguably, you can say they were able to achieve some of that. I mean, lots of degens came into crypto because of Binance Smart Chain. You can make the argument that was a positive thing. It brought a lot of users. I wouldn't, but you could make that argument. But if you look at it, there's a lot of these superficial elements of crypto, right? There's a blockchain, like there's legit a blockchain there, right? There's validators, and they're totally independent, right? There's like independent validators. There's smart contracts. Like, come on, what else do you want? It's totally crypto, except it's not. It has nothing to do with crypto, right? It follows all these superficial forms of crypto, but it's not. It doesn't follow any of the principles. Okay, let's move on to the next example. This one probably will hit a little closer to home. If you look at like Ethereum nodes and where they're based, the first thing you'll notice is that about half of them are based in the US, which is a little bit questionable, let's say, and introduces some risk. But the real issue is when you dig down and like actually go one step further, you realize it's not just in the US. Most of them are based in Virginia, like 20 miles. Stylistically, this is like kind of ridiculous. 20 miles from the White House and like the CIA headquarters. I know they could be anywhere, it doesn't matter, but you have one data center that has like almost a third of Ethereum nodes. Like one building across the street from freaking Joe Biden's house is like where like a third of Ethereum lives. This is problematic. And again, like Binance, you look at it and you say, well, look, there's good reasons for it, right? If you're doing MEV or you're doing like trading on chain, trying to do all kinds of fun stuff, there's a lot of value in being in the same data center as a lot of other nodes. Like I did that. I'm sure lots of people here did that kind of stuff. You want to place your node where it can peer with lots of other nodes, so you get quicker access to the mempool. You can get your transactions in through faster. Lots of good stuff from doing that. But I'm sure all of us felt, I know I did, very smug when Hetzner shut off crypto and like a third of Solana went offline. And we Ethereans felt like, ha ha, those, SQL Lana, ha ha, crypto, Twitter, lots of great jokes, and frankly valid. But the same thing could happen. Like, it's one building that holds a pretty big chunk. So maybe we shouldn't feel so smug. But to end on a positive note with this, look, there's lots of people that are working on this stuff. And I think one of the most important things that we could do is to make solo staking easier. One of the things that we're trying to do, so that we don't have, nodes in the same place, that maybe there's more people, not just in the US, that have a server, under their desk or whatever, that they're running validators, which is a lot harder to censor. Okay, now we're really going to get into it. This one's definitely going to piss some people off. If you look at the distribution of ETH staked out there in different stakers, the top 3 staking services control about half, which is problematic in itself. And hopefully that'll get better. And I think it will post Shanghai. But then if you sort of dig further and look at Lido, which is by far the biggest one, like 5 million, almost 5 million ETH staked, it actually gets a little bit scary when you really get into it. And similar to BSC, I'll start with the positive stuff, because I think Lido is a great team and they're good actors in the space, and they deserve a ton of credit, right? Like, Lido basically, I think, proved out liquid staking derivatives. There was a lot of question about whether, LSDs even made sense, whether they were going to work, whether they could be integrated safely into the rest of DeFi. So a huge amount of credit for that. They launched first, and they're building really great stuff, and they're making good strides forward. So the latest stuff they released with the staking router, really awesome. So that team is great, and so I want to say that before I start bitching about it. It's because I really am genuinely a big fan of them. So to understand kind of the issues, the big issues that exist with, not just with Lido, with a lot of staking protocols, you kind of have to dig one step deeper into how ETH staking works, which is different than the way other proof-of-stake chains work. With ETH staking, when you stake, all you need to do is just deposit your ETH. You generate your credentials and then deposit your ETH into the Beacon Chain deposit contract. But when you unstake, you actually need to do something different. You need to do an exit command on the Beacon Chain, and you need the validator key in order to be able to do that. So it's not enough to just have the withdrawal credentials. You have to actually have the validator key in order to be able to get your ETH back. So, okay, what's the problem? Well, the problem is in most, I think all of the existing staking protocols, only the node operator has the validator key. So what that means is what it means is basically there is no redemption mechanism that is possible to implement via smart contracts. It is basically a voluntary process. I want to reiterate that. When you show up with your ST-ETH post Shanghai and you queue up and you get, you want to redeem it for ETH, it is a voluntary process for the node operator to then give you back the ETH. There is no mechanism that actually forces them to give you back the ETH. That's a problem, right? Like, there's a bunch of node operators that are based in the US. A lot of the nodes are based in the US. We just saw what happened like a week ago, 2 weeks ago, in terms of the SEC issuing a summons to Kraken saying, hey, give us KYC all your US customers and give us their information for tax purposes. Like, that could get really problematic, right? And crypto is a market that's not known for an even-tempered response. So you can imagine, given this sort of voluntary redemption process, any number of scenarios that could end really badly. A bunch of node operators could get hacked and held for ransom if their validator keys are exposed. The SEC could just issue one angry letter to, I don't know, Blockdaemon, for example, and say, hey, you can't release the ETH until you KYC everyone on Lido. So lots of bad things can happen. Now, again, I'll go back to these problems are solvable, and there's lots of people that are working on solving these problems. Again, the staking router that Lido is going to be releasing is awesome and serves to potentially diversify the pool of stake node operators, which is great, would solve this problem. They're also working on DVT, distributed validator technology implementation, which would, I think if they fully move to that, that actually fully solves this problem, which is great. So people are aware of this. There's also mechanisms like upgrades to Ethereum that are in discussion that could potentially address this. So people are aware of this, people are working on it, but for God's sake, there's like $8 billion in Lido. Maybe we shouldn't just ape everything into a protocol that could blow up the entire ecosystem if a certain number of things kind of went particularly bad. I guess what I'm asking for is more like temperance and, I don't know, even-handedness with this stuff. Because decentralization is one of these things that doesn't matter 99% of the time. Like, probably more. 99.9% of the time, decentralization is not something you should really, give a crap about until it does. And then suddenly it's literally the only thing that matters. I'm sure probably just statistically, a lot of people here were impacted by FTX. I'm sure a lot of people, when that happened, suddenly really wish they had their keys and could just get their tokens out. So decentralization matters, and it's important to stick to the core principles rather than just taking shortcuts and aping into stuff. Which is what one of the reasons that we're building Ether.fi, and we're so excited about it. So I mentioned we're launching at ETH Denver. One of the things we're doing is we're going to have a launch party on March 3rd, this Friday at 6 p.m., which is going to be really awesome and fun. It's at Left Hand Rhino. I think it's like a 5-minute walk from the venue. So feel free to register at our Eventbrite, and hopefully we'll see you there. I guess I have a couple minutes, so happy to answer Q&A about other things I can complain about or Etherfi specifically. All right, great. Well, thanks everyone. Really appreciate it, and see you later.